Growing up, parents got me a guitar. Said you could do anything, kid, you could go far. You could be the president, fireman, race cars. The sky's the limit, kid, so shoot for the stars. So I strummed that guitar every day. Found the passion for music never went away. I joined a couple bands and played a few shows. Tried to impress the girl in the front row. But soon enough, everything starts to change. As you grow up, nobody treats you the same. They try to take your future and make it real safe. You could be a doctor, accountant, or something sane. But yo, whatever happened to the sky was the limit. I fell in love with music, never thought it was a gimmick. I worked so hard on every tune and every single lyric. My whole identity depended on being artistic. Now you wanna strip that away, so you feel okay? Cause if I make it to the top, what does that really say? That you shouldn't have given up, that you made the mistake? But if I fail, you feel much better about picking your lane, right? Yeah, things are gonna get better real soon. Yeah, I'ma just do me, you just do you. I swear it's gonna get better real soon. Don't let anyone tell you what you should do. I got a clear view, we're gonna make it soon. Just keep pushing through. You're what you got to lose. You're what you got to lose. You're what you got to lose. Just keep pushing through. Cause what you got to lose. 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 I won't give up, I won't back down till the line sinks in underneath the deep ground. I won't give up, I won't back down. There's nobody stopping me except for me now. I won't give up, I won't back down till the line sinks in underneath the deep ground. I won't give up, I won't back down. There's nobody stopping me except for me now.
How's everyone tonight? To be honest, I was asleep today. I did miss Mass. I was sick. My stepson's sick. My wife's sick, and I'm sick. We all got sick at about the same time. I don't know. The pharmacist still said allergic reaction. I'm going to get an opinion tomorrow from the doc. We'll see what's up with that. Hi. Hi. Oh, special guest star. Hi. All right. So, what are we doing today? I don't know. As I said, this is still an anti-apologetics channel. Don't think that's changing. But my focus isn't going to be on apologetics as a whole. We're going to actually look at more debates with apologists, presenting both sides of the facts. A, it gives me more material to talk about, and B, let's be honest, it's just the more popular content that I do. So we're going to focus a little bit more on that. I'm going to start off with Kevin Batuzzi because he's put out 2 videos recently. And then we're going to go see if I can find my video on West Huff from like 8 months ago. See if I can find it. I do too many streams now. I might not be able to find it. But if I can, we're going to rewatch it because, yeah, everyone's saying what I was saying. And when I said it, people were shitting on me. And now other people, big creators, are saying the exact same thing I said 8 months ago. Let's get some love over here, huh? Let's get some love on my channel. Also, if you are new to me, especially if you're coming from X, because we're doing X now, we're going to start dual streaming from now on. Because I'm so 2005, or 2015. I don't know. I don't know when time is. I don't give a shit. Time's an illusion. Oh, yeah. I'm busy working. You see a camera? Yeah. Can you sit back down? Thank you. Good girl. All right. So we're going to go start off with Cameron Bertuzzi, his latest video. Then we're going to go to his West Huff video. Then we're going to go to my West Huff video. And that should be it for tonight. If not, if I still feel like going more, which I really shouldn't because I got to get back to a normal work schedule by Tuesday, we might do a little bit of a debate watch. Hi. Can I help you? Do you need something? Okay, thank you. All right. And for those wondering, yes, I am going to be doing less stuff on Twitch. That doesn't mean I'm not going to be on Twitch, but I really haven't been using it as a platform, and it really hasn't been growing for me. So I'm going to stick with X and with YouTube. And there's kind of no point in getting onto TikTok right now. So let's wait till all that settles down. Did you watch the Trump discussion today? Oh my gosh. He's deep throating TikTok, which is funny because he's the reason why TikTok went away. So, and I said this in a tweet, in an X, in a post, and whatever you want to call it. I'm gonna call it a tweet. Oh man, she put cat hair all over my face. You're shedding, honey. Okay. Did you see what so here's what I put for my tweet. I said the 12 years of Trump as president, because really now we're gonna have 12 years because we have the 4 years that he was president, the 4 years that he was like the shadow president, and now the 4 year or the anti-president, and now the 4 years that he's back in office. Is that it exactly reflects my life? Exactly reflects my life, which is I get into a place, I create a problem, I then leave for years, and then I come back to solve the problem, and I create all brand new problems when I fix the previous problem. His presidency is my life. So let's get into this. Let's have some fun. Let's start off with El Cameron. Cameron Bertuzzi. Cameron Bertuzzi. What is it? Inspiring philosophy? No, inspiring Christianity? What is it? Christian truth? No, that isn't Christian truth. Which one is it? Oh, also, the Christian King. I was watching his stream earlier. I was going to jump onto his stream. I wasn't able to because his stream got shut down. He's back up, but he's not actually on the screen. It's just his photo, and he's watching something. If you're watching this, invite me on. I'll gladly come debate you, man. Okay, let's do this. Cameron Bertuzzi. What does Cameron Bertuzzi mean? Inspiring Christianity? Inspiring Christianity? Cameron Bertuzzi. I don't know. Right back, guys. Ugh. Being a brat. You know better. Oh, that's uncomfortable. Cool. Capturing Christianity. All right. Capturing Christianity. I think he also should change his channel, but let's listen to his announcement because this really pleased me, and then we'll get into his next stuff.
Today, I'm sharing something deeply personal, and it's an update that's not only changed the channel, but it's also literally changed my life. And it's a change that also comes with risks. So when I announced my conversion to Catholicism over 2 years ago, which it's crazy. It's already been 2 years. I also shared my commitment to.
So I really thought when I was watching this, this is no joke. I thought he was going to say he's no longer going to be Catholic because he's like, it wasn't profitable. The king of all grifters drops out, right? Like that. So I honestly thought he was going to be like, look, it hasn't been financially profitable for me. But I know from the background drama channels that they say that it has been profitable for him. So I was like 90% sure he wasn't, but I was like, there's a big chunk of me that was just like, he's just going to come out and be like, look, I'm not a Catholic. I couldn't do it. It wasn't financially feasible. But no, he's going to say something positive, actually.
Focusing on the essentials of the Christian faith. That season has been very valuable, but I need to be honest with you guys. It was also incredibly challenging for me personally. For a long time, I felt...
Is his wife still a Protestant pastor? Because that's problematic on a whole bunch of theological levels. It's not just that they're different in between Catholic and Protestant, but that they're different in like fundamentals. If she's a pastor, like that's something that's not even allowed. So like, yeah, no, that's big if that's still going on. If she's become Catholic, though, I mean, good for him.
Stuck. Like the topics that I was covering, they felt very important and they still are very important to me, but they started to feel repetitive. And over time, that repetition turned into legit burnout. So I found myself actually slipping into a very severe depression that was directly tied to my work.
And I don't know how honest he's being here, but it does coincide with Jimmy Akin and a few other the big Catholic YouTubers coming in to help him out.
When I began to start to explore new topics like Christianity versus Islam, even...
And by the way, he doesn't owe us any honesty about his personal life. That's totally on him if he exposes that. That's him doing it. I'm just saying that I don't know how open he's actually being. Stop. I don't want to kick you out. Behave.
Exorcisms, theological discussions within Christianity, and then also cultural issues that intersect with the Christian faith. Something really amazing started to happen. So suddenly, what had felt like a chore for years started to become exciting again for me. Branching out into these other areas didn't just like reignite my passion for creating content, which it did. It genuinely helped pull me out of that deep depression that I was experiencing. And I can honestly say that these past 8 months or so of exploring new topics have been some of the most fulfilling of my entire career. And here's what's actually really incredible about this. You guys seem to feel the same way that I do about this new content. Since broadening the scope of our content, our monthly views have gone up by literally, I had to look up the numbers, 600%. And new subscribers have skyrocketed by 700%. What this tells me is that these topics are meeting a really important need and they're resonating with so many of you guys. But I also know not everyone agrees with this change, right? Like some of our longtime subscribers have pushed back, and I completely understand where they're coming from. Like it can be really hard to see something that you followed for years evolve into something new. But given the overwhelming benefits, both personally for me and for the channel, I don't think that we can go back to being hamstrung, to be honest, by such a narrow focus. So what's next? Well,
So I kind of feel like that was 2 minutes of just BS. I don't really feel that he covered what he's about to get into. Like maybe that's just the master of like learning how to grift an audience, and I need to learn that trick. Because I don't, I put everything up front. But yeah, that was 2 minutes of nonsense. Sweetheart, stop. That was 2 minutes of nonsense.
I'm glad you asked. Capturing Christianity is going to continue to evolve. Now,
so when he said that right there, I had like lost all hope. I was like, okay, never mind. He's not becoming a better person. I was wrong. But his next statement saves everything.
With that said, we are still going to cover the classic apologetics that you've come to know and love on the channel. We'll also address atheism when it's relevant from time to time. If someone maybe famous says something silly, we'll probably address it in a commentary type video. But
his attitude toward atheism has turned a lot of people off, not just from him, but from Christianity. So I really do think that was a mistake for him to decide that atheism is a joke. I understand why some theists and Christians think of it as a joke. I get it, but if you're going to have a public profile like this and your whole point is outreach and getting people to convert, this is J Dyer levels of bad faith. So yeah, that was not a good move.
Is that the topics that we've always covered are not going away, but we won't just be limited to those topics moving forward. We're diving deeper into interfaith dialogues, theology, and moral and cultural issues that matter deeply in today's world. And yes, just as I have been doing, I will occasionally share my own opinions, including my own Catholic perspective. But my goal is not to convince everyone to agree with me. It's really to spark meaningful dialogue and deeper exploration of the faith that we all share. So the purpose is still very ecumenical. But to be honest, it's mostly about truth for me. Like I really do love the truth, and I want to share it with like everyone that I can. Here's where things get a little bit tricky. So I know that not everyone is going to be very happy about this change. Like some of our longtime supporters have already expressed frustration with even just the idea of covering pro-Catholic content. And I understand where they're coming from. I really do. When you followed something for so many years, it can be really hard to see it grow in a new direction, especially if you've supported it. So here's the truth. This evolution is going to mean very likely that we're going to lose some of our support. And that's why I need your help more now than ever.
So the first 2 minutes of this was BSE. The second 2 minutes was actual content, but it was kind of unclear where he was going. And then right here, I felt the grift coming, and then he pulls back. And I thought this part here, even though it's like the last minute, was brutally honest.
If you believe in what we're doing, if this content has challenged you, it's inspired you, or even just helped you grow in your faith, please consider supporting us, okay? Whether it's through...
And I'll be honest, when Catholic Answers does this, when they do their drive, that's when I stop watching. And after about, 10 years of watching their stuff, I just stopped watching altogether. I understand that they're a public apostolate, that they need finances. I get all that. They need donations. But they should just put an empty donation button somewhere and let that just stand and not do the drives. Like I get it. That was popular at one point, but it just, oh man, does it leave a bad taste in your mouth when you're talking about religion and people start asking for money openly? It just always, it doesn't sit well together.
Through Patreon or through just prayer or simply sharing our videos. Your support makes everything that we do here actually possible. Capturing Christianity is at a turning point. All right. We're expanding our reach. That is undeniable. The numbers.
And I like that he says that it's undeniable because he had been denying it for the last 2 years. And it got kind of gross. Even Randall Rouser, who's like the most genteel, soft apologist out there, was like, you're just grifting, dude. You're leaving a bad name for all Christians. So the fact that atheists and more progressive Christians had just been completely turned off by what Cameron was doing, it's about time that he made it clear that he's no longer an apologist for Protestantism, that he's no longer focusing on apologetics, on Christian apologetics, that he's focusing on audience capture. He needs to have done this announcement, I think, 2 years ago or a year and a half ago, once he figured out what his channel was becoming. Once he started doing alien autopsies and exorcisms and stuff like that, and interviewing fringe Catholics and fringe Christians, he just needed to admit that he wasn't doing Christian apologetics anymore, and it had become a grift. Whether he wants to admit it or not, whether he ever will admit it or not, even to himself, it had become a grift. So this is good. Now, we all remember SS Sniper Wolf. Okay, so just because he comes clean here doesn't mean he's going to stop grifting or become a better person or it's going to become a more honest or open channel. We don't know any of that yet. But this is a good sign and it's a good move, and I'm happy that he's doing it because I had started to resent him for the amount of, I'm going to call it grift, that he's led flood into the Christian and Catholic apologetic world. Catholics had been really walled off from all of the BS that Cameron has just let in. He's like, it's a little leak that's turned into a flood. And we've been inundated with the David Woods and the James Whites of the world. and we got Gavin Ortlund out of it, and I'm very happy because Gavin Ortlund is like the first Protestant that I really respect their Protestant views. Not just as a Protestant, but like as a Catholic, I respect his views. So I'm glad we got Gavin Ortlund out of it. I'm glad that I was exposed to Jordan B. Cooper out of this. But we got to plug the hole. Like it's getting bad. We should not be doing the kind of con artist grifting. I would even say spiritually abusive practices that some of the Protestants do. Like we have our own huge problems in the Catholic Church. We don't need to add the problems of the megachurch. We don't need to add the problems of the prosperity gospel into the Catholic Church because we already have enough, much larger problems to deal with. So this honesty here is really good for all of us.
Show that, but we're diving into these really critical conversations and tackling issues that really do matter to people. But we can't do it alone. To continue this work and to weather the inevitable loss that's going to come with this change, we need a community that's just as committed to this mission that we have as we are. Thank you so much for being part of this journey. Your support has meant more to me than you guys are ever going to know. But I'm really excited about what's ahead. So let me know your thoughts in the comments below, or feel free to reach out. I'd love to hear from you. Let's keep capturing Christianity together. And as always, remember, Christianity is true.
I'm pretty sure once he switches, he's going to have to change his out phrase. Either he's going to have to change it to Catholicism is true, or Jesus is real, or something like that. He's going to, Christ is king, who knows? But he's going to have to change it. He just will. All right, let me go to the next video, which I thought he also did a good job. Again, I am not a huge fan of his material the last 2 years. I liked him before he became a Catholic. I actually liked him a lot. So I'm surprised that I've had 2 videos, not this one. This was another grifty video, but I'm very happy of these 2 videos right here. So let's hear what he has to say about Wes, and then we'll go to my video on Wes from like 8 months ago.
Yeah, I'm looking
listeners
for,
or whatever
I'm
be able
looking
to
for
see
it
that.
right now to make sure I have the right the version that I'm looking for.
I've even had him on my show to discuss Islam with Avery from God Logic. The guy is incredibly sharp, especially when it comes to the New Testament manuscripts like scribal habits, manuscript dating, and so on. Christians are very lucky to have him in the arena against skeptics. But here's the thing, okay? Nobody is perfect, all right? And as awesome as Wes is, he's not God. He can make mistakes. In particular, I've noticed that he's made some errors about church history. And to be fair, church history is not Wes's area of specialization, right? He's an expert on New Testament manuscripts, but when you step outside of your expertise, it can be easy, or at least easier, to get things wrong, and this happens to everyone. And just to be very clear, this is not a pro-Catholic video. It's a pro-truth video. Just like I think Wes would push back.
Stop doing that. You're a Catholic. Just say you're doing Catholic things. It doesn't matter. You're a Catholic. You say you're doing Catholic things. I got a statue of Saint Peter. You think anyone's questioning where my alliances are? Yes, I got a little Chinese flag. That's a different thing. My wife's Chinese. I got a Pope Peter thing. I need to have like an American flag thing here. I'm looking for one right now, actually. But anyway, on the back of my Jeep, I have this like American flag. It's awesome. And I want, for my car in China, I want to have a Chinese sticker on it. My wife thinks it's so stupid. Doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. It's a year away. Okay, so anyway, no one's doubting I'm Catholic. I sometimes have a Catholic Bible here. Okay, so even when I don't do the Catholic thing, there's no doubt of where I'm standing from. You need to quit trying to play both sides. And I know you just, in 2 videos from now, you make the announcement you're going to stop playing both sides, which I'm happy. But this is so gross when you do this. Let's add here and let's speed this guy up. I'm looking for my Melissa Doherty video that I did responding to Wes.
Back on Joe Rogan if he got facts about Jesus wrong. I think it's only right to push back on Wes if he gets facts wrong about the church that Jesus founded. And before anyone says, well, who are you to correct an expert? You're just like a YouTuber. It's actually a fair question. But this video is not about me. It's about the historical evidence. Okay, we're going to go straight to the primary sources, records that anyone can verify for themselves.
I'm going to be really blunt. He doesn't go to the primary sources. I've already seen this video. I don't think he understands what primary sources are. There are source books, but those are actually secondary sources because they're translations. The primary source would be the original work in its original form, in its original language. If it's a photocopy, it's not a primary source. If it's a translation, it's not a primary source. It is a source, and that's okay, but not a primary source.
So you definitely want to stick around. This is not just like a regular response video. This is basically a journey into church history that's going to challenge you, it's going to inspire you, and maybe even surprise you. So to begin, let's look at Wes's interview with Joe Rogan. There he claimed that 24 out of the 27 books of the New Testament were unanimously accepted by the church as early as the 2nd century. Here's the clip.
Because the New Testament has 27 books in it. Very early on, 24 of the 27 are unanimously accepted. So by the time you get to the middle of the 2nd century, we have lists in documents like there's a document called the Muratorian Fragment, which there's debate on its dating, but it's probably like mid to late 2nd century. And it includes 24 of the 27. And it gives reasoning why. Now, the other books that are in our New Testament that aren't in that 24 are ones that were discussed because the earliest Christians were trying to figure out, okay, can we tie this to either an apostle or someone who knew an apostle?
All right, so first, Wes cites the Muratorian Fragment, also known as the Muratorian Canon, to support his argument. So
just to be clear, I don't know anything about that.
for those who might not be familiar, this Roman document is one of the earliest known lists of New Testament books, dating to around AD 170.
Maybe it's the way that he's wording it, because I've seen the early canon lists before, so maybe it's a Muratorian manuscript. Maybe he's just using a word that I don't normally associate.
It offers invaluable insight into how early Christians viewed Scripture. However, the evidence that it provides doesn't align with Wes's claim. So, for example, the Muratorian Canon explicitly omits Hebrews, James, 1st and 2nd Peter, and also only mentions 2 letters of John, not the 3rd included in the New Testament today. That brings the total down to 22 books, not 24, as Wes
was a live
claimed.
stream.
Additionally, the canon includes 2 books that Wes, as a Protestant, wouldn't recognize as Scripture: the Apocalypse of Peter, which isn't in anyone's Bible today, and the Wisdom of Solomon, which is included in Catholic Bibles but excluded from Protestant ones. This means that the list doesn't just omit some of today's New Testament books, it also adds books that Wes wouldn't consider inspired. But now we want to be extremely charitable toward Wes. Let's give him the benefit of the doubt here. In other parts of the interview with Rogan, he got some of the numbers wrong, like likely due to nerves. It's entirely possible that he misspoke and meant to say 22 books instead of 24. It's totally understandable. Public speaking can be super tough, especially on a platform as high profile as Rogan's. But even with...
It's easy. Anyone who says this is work is lying to you. This is easy. You know what it takes to do well? You need money. You need enough money to get boosted and get algorithmically recognized. That's what you need. You need money to make money. That's the secret.
With that correction, the Muratorian Canon doesn't support Wes's broader argument. In fact, it shows just how unsettled the New Testament canon was in the 2nd century. Also, as an aside, since Wes used this point to kind of refute the idea that we need to rely on the Catholic Church for the New Testament, it's worth pointing out that the Muratorian Canon explicitly references the Catholic Church 3 times. It even mentions Pope Pius I, describing him.
And I mentioned this in my last response or rebuttal or whatever you want to call it to Wes. I simply busted out the councils that he was saying didn't mention the Catholic Church. And I read the canons that mention the Catholic Church and mention the church at Rome and mention the power struggle thereof and how they want to have the same amount of authority as the Church of Rome holds, including being able to make rules of surrounding smaller dioceses. So like the larger churches wanted to be able to tell the smaller dioceses what to do, just like the Catholic Church was able, or the Church of Rome was able to do to its smaller ones. So yeah, no, hey, what's up, Eunice? So yeah, Wes is just lying, and every Protestant coming out trying to defend him for saying something stupid. We have the documents. We have the records of the ecumenical councils. We have their notes. Like, we have the liner notes to these councils. Stop, sweetie. Stop. I know. Stop. Shh. No. I'm working. Down. Okay. So Wes is just being horribly dishonest. And At first, when I saw him on, 'cause I first saw him on Ally Beth Stuckey's, I think, and I responded to him then, and then I responded to him on Melissa Doherty's show. So I've known about him for maybe about a year, maybe two max, but not beyond that. And it is just disturbing how much he gets wrong. And at the time, I was like, well, he's a Protestant apologist. Maybe he's going to a Protestant school, so maybe he's like Moody Bible College level anti-apologetics, right? No, he's going to a legit college. He has no reason to be making the mistakes that he's making. It is completely apologetical and polemical, the things that he's saying against the Catholic Church. It has nothing to do. We are doing, well, we don't really have a topic. We're just watching two of Cameron Battusi's videos, and then we're going to watch a little bit of a previous video I did on Wes, and then that's going to be it. We're probably only going to go about 30 minutes more. It's just a check-in stream. I was off. If you're new to the channel, I was gone for about 2 weeks. I was in China visiting my wife, and I was teaching English over there, and it was fun. And I got a job offer that I have to say yes to before the end of the year. And it's not like I can't say yes. I have to say yes to one of the offers I got. So, I don't know. If you want to say anything, ask a question about the Catholic Church, ask a question about comic books, ask a question about why Cameron Bertuzzi is getting uglier, feel free. Why I'm getting more handsome, feel free. Questions about any of the stuff I have in my background, feel free.
As the, quote, bishop occupying the episcopal chair of Rome in the 140s. Moreover, if that wasn't enough, the question of the canon wasn't just a 2nd century issue. Writing in the 4th century, 150 years later, the church historian Eusebius noted that several New Testament books were still being debated. He listed 2 Peter as uncanonical and Hebrews, James, Jude, 2nd and 3rd John, and Revelation as disputed books. That's 7 books still under question, more than 150 years after Wes's supposed unanimous agreement. So it's at best actually 20 out of 27, not 22 or 24 out of 27. But the situation is even more complex when you consider what early Christians treated as scripture.
Oh, and it's sometime. Oh, hello, Eunice. Hi. You're from China. That's cool. I am not from China, but I have a love for your country because I have a love for my wife. So, yeah.
A prime example is the Shepherd of Hermas, a lengthy Christian text from the 2nd century written in Rome and attributed to Hermas.
This is religious stuff, anti-apologetical stuff, man. You might not be interested in this. It's kind of a niche topic. But yeah, you're welcome to stick around and listen. What part of China are you in?
A former slave. The shepherd consists of visions, of parables, and commandments aiming to guide Christians in their faith and moral lives. And it was so highly regarded in the early church that it was frequently read during worship services. And in fact, it's one of the few non-canonical texts that explicitly is mentioned in early Christian lists of recommended readings. Church fathers.
So when I was doing my response to Wes, well, actually, it was a response to Melissa, but when I was doing my response to Melissa on this same video after she interviewed Wes, cool. So I brought up pretty much a few church fathers that are early period church fathers, and including controversial church fathers like Origen and Tertullian, and how they mention the church and how they use the term Catholic and how they use the term Trinity. I know that Origen isn't given credit for that because of political reasons, but he still used it, and that's still very early. I know that me and Dan disagree on what is early, but anything anti-Nicene, meaning pre-Nicene, to me is early church. And if you want to argue with me on that, I'll gladly have the debate. I might even lose the debate, but I'd gladly have that discussion if you want to say that anything pre-Nicene is not early church. But to me, anything pre-Nicene is early church. You want to talk about the primeval church, the church before the resurrection. Yeah, that's basically biblical conversation. If you want to talk about what the church was when John was the guy, before the foundation of the church, before Pentecost, we can get into that as well. But really, 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 like if it's anti-Nicene, it has to be early church. And to me, that's foundational. You're talking about when the beliefs were still fluid. So, yeah.
Others like St. Irenaeus cited the shepherd as scripture, affirming its
when the doctrines and dogmas were still being defined.
value and spiritual authority alongside other sacred texts. The debate surrounding the shepherd demonstrate that the process...
Again, that's 125 AD. That's within 100 years of Christ's death. I don't understand how Wes and how some of the biblical scholars don't call that early church. You know, they start saying, oh, well, that's a century late, or not century, sorry. That's a decade later or a century later. Happy New Year. So like, it's just a weird conversation. For those wondering, for those watching this later, I know I get a good boost on YouTube at 10:30 in the morning. Chinese New Year is coming up. It's the year of the snake. This buddy is from, one of the persons I'm talking to is from China. That's why.
Process of determining which writings belonged in the Bible was not as straightforward or as universally agreed upon as some might assume. It reflects the broader, complex journey of how the church discerned the text that would ultimately form the canon that we recognize today. So what's the takeaway here? The New Testament canon was not unanimously accepted in the 2nd century, unfortunately. Instead...
So for those that don't know the Catholic view on this, the canon isn't closed. We can't add any New Testaments. That's true. But older testaments are still able, that as long as they're recognized by at least the Orthodox Church or the Oriental Church or even the Russian Orthodox Church, they can still be added in to a later edition of the Bible. They just wouldn't be primary canon. So you have primary canon, deuterary canon, tertiary canon, which I always say wrong. And then you have like 5th level and 6th level canon, which kind of is like the church father writings. So there's like a misunderstanding on how that works. So for Protestants who have this closed canon that's even smaller than the canon that was available during the Reformation is bizarre. It's like purposely cutting out information, necessary information to understand context. It's a weird choice.
It was the product of a centuries-long process of discernment, of debate, and ultimately resolution by the church. And here's a crucial point.
And also the Old Testament, having that considered a closed canon is also highly debatable. For a long time, there's a later council, I think it's Council of Jamnia or something like that, where supposedly the rabbinical fathers closed the Hebrew canon. That's not true. That ended up being debunked. So there is no closed canon in Hebrew either. There's no closed Hebrew canon. It's just the Protestants who want this, like, what is it called? Assurance. You know, they need assurance. They need to know that they're really saved. They need to know that the Bible is really correct. They're the only ones arguing for this. And as Catholics, we need to stop having Protestant arguments. We're not Protestants. This is why I've grown to dislike the Ignatius Study Bible, the New Testament version, because it presents a Protestant-friendly, single point of view that is not a Catholic point of view. It's a very Catholic Bible. It's a flavor of Catholicism. I'm not saying that it's not Catholic, but the caveats and the outreach is toward a Protestant or ex-Protestant. As a Catholic, I don't need that. I was never a Protestant. I don't need someone to assure me that the faith that I learned in Protestantism is still true. I don't need that. I was never a Protestant, so I don't need that affirmation to feel comfortable with the Catholic Church. I've always been a Catholic, except for when I was a Taoist. So, like, unless you're going to start doing Taoist outreach, I don't really think this is a necessary thing. Yeah, I have a problem with Douglas Beaumont. I have a problem with Scott Hahn. I love Gary Machuda, and the fact that Gary Machuda is now doing stuff with Sam Shamoon of all people, that's insane. Sam Shamoon, the hardcore anti-Catholic, where I went on the show one time to say, hey, you're being cruel to Catholics and cruel to atheists, and he just did a wall of expletives, is now a Catholic. That's insane to me.
All right, the same church that finalized the New Testament canon also affirmed the Deuterocanonical.
By the way, thank God for that. So I'm very grateful that Sam Shamoon found the Catholic Church. I'm not dissing that, but if you would have seen how he was treating Catholics just 3 years ago, that's completely unexpected.
Books that Wes, as a Protestant, rejects. If Protestants trust the church's authority in defining the New Testament, why not trust it on the Old Testament as well? To sum up, while it's possible Wes meant 22 books instead of 24, even 22 would be wrong and is large.
And I also brought this up, is that Wes seems to have a misunderstanding of what books in the New Testament were uncontroversial. A lot of the books that we think of as fundamental to Christian understanding were not books that the Christians thought should be in the Bible. The Shepherd of Hermas and the Didache were higher ranked in credibility than some of the books that we ended up with. Hebrews, for instance, and Revelation, or the Apocalypse, were not supposed to be in the New Testament. People did not like those books because they were too easily misunderstood and too easily abused because they didn't really know who wrote these books. So, yeah, there's cases that were made for their canonization, and eventually those cases won. But that's more because the tradition developed where people just kept using them, and the more popular books like the Shepherd Hermas just fell out of use.
Larger claim still doesn't align with the historical evidence. The real story is far more complex and far more fascinating. All right, now that we've clarified the evidence around the New Testament canon.
Ugh. I'll be right back. I'm getting some water. So I want to let you guys know I'm also going to be doing a new series where I'm going to call it, I think I'm going to tie this tentative right now. I'm going to call it Debunked and Refuted. And I am going to go back to my original videos and I'm going to go back and redo them. I'm going to comment on them and I'm going to be correcting myself. So that's going to happen throughout this year. And then what I'm going to do is with the older ones, I'm going to either private them or put them behind the membership wall. And yeah, I'll take care of that. Okay, let's keep going.
And let's move to another one of Wes's claims, this time about the history of the Catholic Church. In his discussion, Wes argues that what we now consider Roman Catholicism didn't exist until the 9th century.
That is the weirdest statement of all. Okay, so let's say you don't want to consider Pentecost the birth of the church, which is ridiculous. You should. And let's say that you don't want to consider the church in Rome that existed before Peter and Paul got there, the Catholic Church. Fine. And let's say you don't want to acknowledge the martyrdoms of... Stop, sweetie. And let's say you don't want to acknowledge the martyrdoms of Paul and Peter, which is a Christian. I think that's a huge mistake. But let's say you want to go there. That only leaves you with Clement of Rome. So you still have a pope in Rome before the Bible is written. You still, even if you deny that the early home churches are the Roman church that we have today in Rome, so you deny Perpetua and whoever the other lady is, I can never remember. You deny them. Okay, and you deny Peter and Paul's martyrdom, which again I think is a huge mistake, Christologically and theologically to do so. But let's say you do. You're like, hey, those are extra biblical traditions. They're unprovable. I don't think they happen. Okay, you still have Clement of Rome. So you still have a pope within the first 100 years of the church. Let me give the exact date for Clement of Rome. Clement of Rome. So yeah, in 99 AD. So you have a pope by 99 AD. Jesus died in 33. In less than 60 years after Jesus' death, you have the Church of Rome existing. You have a pope. Like, if you just want to throw everything out and just go with the first papal encyclicals, encyclicals just means letters. The first papal letters, the first, you have a pope in 99. You have a bishop of Rome, which is what the pope is. The pope is a bishop of Rome. That's all that it is. Yes, the office has grown politically. The titles have changed and honorifics have been added. But you have a bishop in Rome, a bishop of Rome in Rome by 99 AD. You have a Catholic Church by 99 AD. You have the earliest apologist, I guess, in Tertullian and Origen, using the term Catholic to refer to the church that Clement is head of. You have the Catholic Church. Sorry, dude. Like, that's just history. I'm not debating theology here. I'm not saying it's the same structure. I'm not saying it's the same political power. Of course not. The political power and all that's grown. But you have a bishop in Rome, a bishop of the Catholic Church by 99 AD. You just, even if you want to deny all the other Catholic claims, you can't get past that. So it's ridiculous, Wes, what you're saying.
Which is actually
unless you're going to say that the letters of Clement are synonymous. So then we jump to Leo. Well, that's still like 400s. When's Leo the Great? The 400 something? Leo the Great. So you 461. So if you don't want to call Clement's letters authentic, well, then you got Leo the First as the next big pope that's important. That's 461. That's still well before your year 900 claim. So that doesn't make any sense. And 461 doesn't even matter because you have the first ecumenical council, the Council of Nicaea, acknowledging Rome. So you are talking about You're talking about 325 as the earliest date for there to be a church in Rome. So if you go with my dating and you think that the letters of Clement are authentic, you have 99 AD as the first evidence, non-biblical evidence of a pope, physical evidence, if you will, of a pope in Rome, of a bishop of Rome. If you don't want to go with that, you have the First Ecumenical Council, which acknowledges Rome's existence as a power and as a church that has honor above the other churches. Or you have the Council of Chalcedon, which also acknowledges it. Michael often does the same list, by the way. I've read all this stuff, so I'm saying it the way that I'm saying it, but Michael often's read more than me, and he knocks even more. He puts even more pieces there. So, Wes, you're just wrong.
Claim. So let's hear what he has to say.
But I think even using the term Roman...
And this is the video that I'm talking about, and we're going to watch that in a second.
Catholicism, to talk about the time period where the canon of...
We're going to watch my video, not this video. You'll get it.
Scripture was being discussed is an anachronism.
And based off this video, I thought he was not a legitimate scholar. I'm going to be very honest. I thought he was an apologist. Maybe he went to Moody Bible College or something like that. I didn't realize that he was actually a legitimate here. Is we're stretching the word a little bit, but he was actually a legitimate scholar, biblical scholar. I didn't know that at the time when I saw this. I was like, oh, he's just another Protestant apologist who went to a Bible school, probably in Canada.
In that, what we know of as modern day Roman Catholicism, its ideas, its teachings, its dogmas would have
The qualifiers, the amount of qualifiers he put there, should just tell you right away he's BSing.
been foreign to the first few centuries.
For those that don't know, every time there's a new council, we're under a new spirit. So we're under the spirit of Vatican II right now as Catholics. So this way of understanding what the Catholic Church is, because the claim is that the original church founded by Christ subsists inside the Catholic Church, not that everything that has accreted to the Catholic Church is part of that original tradition.
In fact, I would argue that you don't get what I would consider to be Roman Catholicism until the 9th century.
That is a ridiculous claim. You have letters from the Bishop of Rome, from Clement of Rome, a pope. You have those in 99. And if you don't want to think his letters are authentic, then you have the Council of Nicaea acknowledging the church in Rome in, in 325. And if you don't want to take their word for it, if you don't trust ecumenical councils, which I don't know why you don't, but if you don't trust ecumenical councils, then you have Leo the Great, less than 100 years after that. So you're talking about in the 400s. So you're talking about, at best, in the 3rd century, you have a clearly defined Roman church, which has a place above honor in the whole church. And you have the patriarchate. You're literally denying literal history. You have the patriarchate. You have the 5 patriarchs. You have, Alexandria, Constantinople. Is it Corinth or Constantinople? I think it's the church in Corinth and then changes to Constantinople, right? So, Jerusalem, Antioch, Alexandria, I'm going to say Corinth, and Rome. Okay? You have the 5 patriarchs right there. What, are you going to deny all of history so you can have your anti-Catholic opinion? Like, this is so stupid.
And the reason I would argue that is because at the 9th century, it's the first time that the Pope,
Echo, turn on library.
Okay.
Echo, set library to 100%.
Okay.
Bishop of Rome, chooses the Roman Emperor, Charlemagne, and not the other way around.
No. So that's not even a good argument. You have to understand how the Great Schism even happened. You have to understand how the Empress of Constantinople. Is it Constantinople? It's either Constantinople or it's Corinth. I think it's Constantinople. You have to understand how the Greek Empress, the power struggle that was happening there. So again, he's not acknowledging anything, and he's twisting history.
So it's the first time where there's a shift in that you have what's considered, the Carolingian Renaissance, where you have under Charlemagne the Great. But all of a sudden, there's a shift in power.
So Wes's claim here is simply not accurate, and it oversimplifies centuries of church history. St. Irenaeus, writing in AD 180, nearly 700 years before the 9th century, explicitly traces the succession of the bishops of Rome back to Peter. And let's remember, this was during the pagan era, when Rome's emperors were far more likely to persecute Christians than appoint their bishops. Irenaeus
Not just far more likely, they actively persecuted Christians.
writes in Against Heresies, Book 3, Chapter 3, he writes this: "We are in a position to reckon up those who were by the apostles instituted bishops in the churches, to demonstrate the succession of these men to our own times." Irenaeus then goes on to use the, quote, church founded and organized at Rome by the 2 most glorious apostles, Peter and Paul.
You know what? It's getting so long that it looks like we might not actually get to my video, but that's okay. We'll go a little bit longer with this guy than we planned to do, and then we'll call it a night, and I'll see you all tomorrow. But let's keep going.
As the chief example because of its, quote, preeminent authority. He then goes on to list the bishops of Rome, starting with Linus and continuing through Eleutherius, who was the pope at the time of his writing. I don't know how to pronounce these names, but I'm going to give them a try, all right? So it starts at Linus, Anacletus, Clement, Evaristus, Alexander, that one's easy, Sixtus, Telephorus, Hyginus, Pius, Anicetus, Soter,
Linus, Anacletus, Cletus, Avratius, Alexander, Sextus, Telephorus, Hyginus, Pius, Anicetus, and Soda. Eleuthetus. No. Is that an I or a T? I can't tell. Eleuthenus.
I already said this one. Eleutherius. All right, let's pause for a moment. Okay, Wes's claim that Roman Catholicism began in the
benefits of knowing a little bit of Spanish
9th century hinges on the idea that the church's power and authority only emerged when a pope crowned Charlemagne. But here we have an unbroken line of bishops all the way back to Peter, whose authority was already being recognized. And it's worth noting that none of these bishops were appointed by pagan emperors, as Wes's comment implies here.
Later on, like I said, we're changing the focus from simple anti-apologetics to anti-apologetics through debates, through debate commentary, I guess. But I am going to have to address Wes a few more times, and not just because of his popularity, because of the misinformation that he's giving of church history. He has a bad understanding of history. You don't need to be a Catholic to understand history. And a lot of Protestants, for some reason, have a really bad understanding of history. And it goes back to their understanding of the Bible. They somehow think the Bible was written and then things happened. That's not how it worked. First, the thing happened, then people talked about it. Then people wrote it down. Then multiple versions of what happened were written down. And then eventually a synthesis happened where different traditions got condensed into one edition, and you had redactors and you had compilers and redactors. This is true for almost all text, for almost all storytelling. This is not just true for like Mark or Matthew or Luke. This is true for all writing. This is how things get written down, unless you have a single author like modern fiction. And even that is a lie. Modern authors have ghostwriters. Modern writers have editors. Modern writers have different drafts, and they even have what's called reading teams. You have a beta reading team and an alpha reading team, and then you even have like a final draft version that can still be corrected before the actual final copy goes out. And all those voices get added into the version that you actually see. Same thing with movies. There's no such thing as an auteur movie. In real life, you have editors and producers and studios that interfere with the product that you get. A good example of this is X-Men. Go watch the Rogue Cut and go watch the original I think it's X3 or Future Past, whichever one it is. Watch both versions. They're two completely different movies. Go watch Daredevil, the one with Ben Affleck. There's two different versions, and one version is an amazing movie, and one version is trash in comparison. So you have to understand that this is not just true for modern media. This is true for writing and storytelling in general. This is, if you're someone who's a big Jordan Peterson fan, this is the whole maps of meaning. This is how the story gets kept getting reproduced until it gets refined to a good version. And once it hits that that penultimate or ultimate version, all you can get is derivatives after that, and then it starts to decline until the story gets refreshed and renewed, which has to happen all the time. So if you understand maps of meaning, if you understand the hero's journey, if you understand what it takes to be a writer or how narratives work, everything that Wes and Protestants are saying is false. It makes no sense. The Bible didn't come down whole and complete. We're not Muslims. We don't hold that idea.
Here, the leadership of the church was firmly tied to apostolic succession, not political appointments. In short, Wes's claim does not hold up to historical evidence. While it's true that certain political aspects of the papacy evolved over time,
with Constantine, with Attila the Hun. I think, was it Attila the Hun, or was it the other one? It wasn't Genghis Khan, right? Was it Genghis Khan or was it Attila? Whoever, the one that almost went to Rome, and the Pope went out and got him to stop. That rose the political stock of Rome by a lot. And then after the fall of the empire, where the papacy, the Roman Church was the only one keeping the historical Roman stuff alive. Sela from YouTube says, "Hi, I don't understand devoting oneself to a fairy tale when one can be free." Oh, one, it's not a fairy tale, and two, it depends what you mean by freedom. But feel free to challenge what I just said.
Authority of the Church of Rome and its recognition.
How do you mean fairy tale? What aspect? What of? Meaning what?
as a central pillar of Christianity was firmly in place hundreds of years before the 9th century. Saint
Because if you, well, I'll wait till you say what your response is. But I got books down here, not on this level, that level down here, that are all about how history is written. So I mean, we can get into how much of history is actually true in a different conversation.
Irenaeus provides us an incredibly early and detailed account of apostolic succession that makes that abundantly clear. Next up, Wes suggests that the understanding of the Pope as the supreme bishop of Rome, superseding all other bishops, didn't emerge until the 9th century. Let's hear what he said.
If I was going to pick a time frame, I would say what we refer to as modern Roman Catholicism, with kind of the magisterium, with the Pope having this position as the Bishop of Rome and that superseding all other bishops. And
Clement of Rome, 99 AD. Wes? And there's another pope. There's another pope that's like, I've looked this up before. I even have like 3 books on it, and I still can't remember the guy's name. It's like the first bishop of Rome that we have. I think that's what I typed in. First bishop of Rome we have evidence for. I think that's what I typed in. No, not St. Peter. It's the guy after him. First, after Peter. I don't like the new Google. I don't like the new search engines. Okay, so we have Linus from Irenaeus and Eusebius, and from Irenaeus. It looks like Linus, but I don't think it's Linus. I think it's the 3rd pope that we have like actual documents from. Maybe it is Linus. Hold on, let me see. Linus against heresies. I don't think it's Linus is the one that I'm thinking of. It's not important right now.
This kind of thing, the Vatican, I would say you get that understanding at its kind of earliest fruition in the 9th century. And so to apply that to the early period when
But yeah, if you want apostolic historical Christian writings, Linus is going to be your guy.
Conversations regarding,
which is way before Clement, by the way,
canon of Scripture.
But you have bishops in Rome before the Bible was formed, before the Gospels were finished. So like this whole argument is ridiculous. This is insane. And you have in the Bible itself, you have a church in Rome already when when Paul is writing his letters. So this is what Wes is saying is ridiculously untrue. Like even if you want to just use the Bible and say that's the only thing you got. Yeah.
Where people are having discussions about recognizing, not choosing, recognizing the books of the Bible, that wouldn't make any sense.
Wes's claim here is also incorrect, and not just from a Catholic perspective. Yeah. Even Protestant historians recognize that belief in the Pope's supreme authority existed long before.
No, supreme authority. Don't go there. That's the wrong track. That's the wrong track. First among equals. The Pope has a place of honor. And calling it the Pope is the wrong title anyway. The seat of Peter has a place of honor. The argument is the seat of Peter, Rome, or is the seat of Peter, Antioch? And the second argument is his place of honor. Is it the first among equals? Is it the tie breaking vote? And does the apostolic succession extend to the authority, to the power of Peter? Because the argument is that Jerusalem, Alexandria also have claims, and Antioch also have claims to papal authority. And there's more than one bishop, more than one patriarch that's called pope, by the way. So you're stuck. Cameron is as well, and so is Wes. He's stuck in a Western Latin perspective, Western perspective, American perspective. In the rest of the world, there is another bishop called Pope. My lip is peeling, sorry. I got super sick and super dry lips, and it was bad. I'm just getting out of it. But yeah, no, this perspective is completely false. It's a false narrative, and Cameron's falling into the trap, and he needs to stay out of the trap. We have the patriarchate. We can prove Rome without having to do any of the BS Protestant Reformation crap. So stop going there. We have the Eastern Church that we can use as proof, because there's letters between bishops and there's letters between patriarchs and there's ecumenical councils acknowledging each other. There's other ways to prove this without having to go down the Reformation road of, Wesley, Luther, Calvin. They are from the year 1556, 1536. Like they're in the founding of Rome. So we shouldn't be arguing from a medieval perspective. This is really stupid. And it's a thing that a lot of ex-Protestants fall into.
The 9th century. Let's break this down. So first, Protestant historian Philip Schaff flatly contradicts Wes's claim here. According to Schaff, quote, the idea of the papacy, as it were, became flesh and blood, end quote, in Pope St. Leo the Great. And Leo lived in the 5th century. 400.
So again, Leo is one of the ones that I mentioned earlier, but there are popes previous to this. Again, he's using a Protestant. Everyone needs to stop using Protestant sources. Everyone needs to stop using Protestant sources.
100 years before Wes says that the papacy came into
I'm
existence.
not saying to use Catholic sources, by the way. I'm just saying Protestant apologetical resources are crap. Don't use them.
Schaff also explains that Leo believed.
Right back. I'm going to put some lip balm on. It's funny. I just bitched at Cameron, but I'm going to use Philip Schaff myself. Hypocrisy. It's a problem. Anyway, go buy this book, okay? Just go buy this book, and you'll see that everything that Wes Huff is saying about church history is wrong. Read this and then read Eusebius is what I would recommend. I love Eusebius. But yeah, just read the ecumenical councils and the synods that support them in between. This is the first 7. And you'll see that Wes's understanding of Christian history is completely false. These are the councils. These are the churches arguing with each other and arguing over claims and arguing over authority and arguing over who's in charge. And this is all political stuff. It's not religious stuff, even though a lot of important religious stuff like the creeds are defined in here. This will give you a great understanding of church history.
Petrine primacy was, quote, not limited to the apostolic age, but like the faith of Peter and like the church herself, it perpetuates itself through the bishops of Rome who are related to Peter as Peter was related to Christ, end quote. As Eric Ybarra puts it in The Papacy, quote, Protestant scholarship seems rather clear on the matter. By the way, you can check out Ybarra's book for a comprehensive review of the evidence. But we don't have to stop with Schaff or with Ybarra. Leo himself made it clear how he understood the papacy. In one of his letters, Leo writes this. Furthermore, there is also another reason for this celebration, not only the apostolic, but also the episcopal dignity of Blessed Peter, who has not ceased to preside over his...
So I was thinking of Clement. So we have St. Peter, which, you are the rock. Then we have St. Linus, which is according to the assertions of different church fathers. And then we have Saint Anacletus, which on the earliest list lists him after Linus. And then we have Saint Clement, which we have letters for, and we have assertions from Tertullian. So if you want a bishop of Rome, we got it. So there you go. I believe his first epistle is considered legit, but his second epistle might not be. But if you want a first pope, like when is this? When's Clement? 91 to 101. And you have him being acknowledged by Tertullian in 160 to 225, and by Jerome in 331 and 420. So, and Irenaeus in 180. So, yeah, no, I mean, you don't need to go very far. That's from Oxford. Maybe you don't think Oxford is a good resource. So let's try Harper 1. You think Harper 1's a good resource? Okay. So again, you have Peter. Then you have Linus. Then you have Cletus, who may or may not have been an ex-slave. He's acknowledged by Eusebius. And then you have Clement, who we have letters from. And again, this one is saying between 88 and 101 AD. So, years are slightly different by a few years. Still the same. And he's mentioned in the Shepherd of Hermas, so we know he existed, not just from his letters. So I really don't know what Wes is talking about. I'm not using Catholic sources. These are secular sources here. Unless you want to call Oxford and Harper somehow controlled by the Vatican.
See, and continues an ongoing sharing with the eternal priest. For the solidity which he, having been made Peter the rock, received from Christ the rock, has passed on to his heirs. So by the 5th century, belief in the authority of the Bishop of Rome through St. Peter definitely existed, like at least 400 years before Wes's claim. But it gets worse. Let's rewind even further to the 2nd century. Around AD 180, St. Irenaeus made his high view of the Church of Rome's authority crystal clear. Before listing the bishops of Rome, from Linus to his own day, Irenaeus writes, quote, "It is a matter of necessity that every church should agree with the, quote, church founded and organized at Rome by the two most glorious apostles, Peter and Paul, quote, on account of its preeminent."
Anyone watching on X, for those that don't know me, I see there's a few more people watching on X right now. I'm open to debate. I'm open to discussion. We can open up the lines on El Twitter. Let me see if I can get this open. We can open it up there and we can talk. Okay. So I can put it live. I bought the premium thing so we can talk. If you want to talk to me, feel free. So, yeah, don't think that this is just one-sided. If you want to argue with me or talk to me, you guys are welcome to come on in. All right, let's keep going.
Authority. This isn't some late political invention. It's a clear acknowledgement of the Roman Church's central authority made over 600 years before the 9th century. But we're not done. In the same century, Pope Victor I sought to settle the Easter controversy by enforcing a universal standard for celebrating the holiday. He called on churches the world over to hold synods to settle the question. They answered the call, and the church decreed that the Easter fast should end on a Sunday, a practice still adhered to today. According to Eusebius's Church History, Book 4, Chapter 24, when some Eastern churches refused to follow the majority view, Victor, quote, attempted at one stroke to cut off from the common unity all the Asian dioceses, together with the neighboring churches, on the ground of heterodoxy, and pilloried them in letters in which...
Again, for those watching on X who don't know me, feel free to challenge me. This is not a one-sided thing. You don't have to agree with me. I welcome opinions that are different than my own. So feel free to ask anything you want to ask. YouTube guys, you already know.
Which he announced the total excommunication of all his fellow Christians there, end quote. While it's true that some bishops like Irenaeus advised Victor to make peace with the East here, it's also clear that Pope Victor wasn't a man waiting for the 9th century to exercise authority over foreign churches. Here are his exact words.
And I would say that the church doesn't make the Bible makes the church.
That is completely false, completely untrue. And he was just saying that to comfort her because she was getting nervous. Again, if we watch my video, which we probably won't do tonight, we might do like a little snippet of it. You'll see that I mentioned that there.
The Bible is not a product of the church. The church is
everyone who wrote everyone who wrote the Bible was a Catholic. As in, they were a member of the Christian church, of the early Christian church, which is called the Universal Church, which we translate into the word Catholic. I don't mean the political body that exists today in Rome. I mean the early church, the Catholic Church, the Universal Church, the early patriarchate, when the Eastern Church and the Western Church were one, and there had not yet been a split off of Chalcedon. That original church is the Catholic Church. That church where all 5 patriarchs are one, where all 12 patriarchs, the original bishops, are one, where the churches had not split off from each other. That original church is the Catholic Church, Catholic Christians. And the reason why they're called Catholic is because each church had its own tradition. Each book that we read, Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, are all part of different church traditions. The Mattheans read the Matthews, and they also read whatever church their co-conspirators, if you will, also agreed with. And don't think of big congregations; think of small little house churches. And they would also then, so the Lucians, however you want to talk it, they read Luke and Acts, and then the Mattheans read Matthew. I think Matthew is the popular book from Alexandria, and the Petrine books or the Petrine letters, which are the epistles, are going to be read in the Antiochian churches. And you have 2 different styles. You have the more literal, word for word readings, the simple readings from Antioch. And then you have the more metaphorical, spiritual readings from Alexandria. You have all this stuff going on. And Wes, even though he acknowledges these things, he then in the very next sentence denies them. And to me, that's either hypocrisy or it is bias, blind spots, or it is outright lying and misinformation. So either he's a propagandist, he's misinformed or ill-informed and deluded, or he's a liar. Because nothing that he's saying is true.
product of divine revelation in Scripture.
So at first glance, Wes's claim might sound plausible. Maybe he means that the Christian scriptures sort of ground the church, serving as the foundation that it's built on. If so,
So again, first the thing happened, then the tradition grew, then different versions of the tradition were written down, and then they were compiled. Then after they were compiled and condensed into one thing, they were then redacted. And then later, long later, they were canonized. And even after the redaction, different versions of it split out because people, when they finally wrote it down, different writers made mistakes. So they're reporting a similar history, but the history isn't all the same. And to call them different accounts is also kind of weird because they're basing each other's information on each other, unless you're talking about John, which is kind of doing his own thing. But Matthew and Mark are definitely related textually. And when you get to Luke, there's some questions about that. John is the only thing that's completely unique. So, there you go. And John's written when after the theology had already developed, but there already was theology, there already was liturgy before the Gospels were written. Otherwise, you can't have otherwise you can't have Paul acknowledging them. Because Paul is acknowledging the oral tradition and the practices and the rituals before the Gospels were written. Paul is written some 20 to 30 years after the death of Jesus. The Gospels are written some 20 or 30 years after Paul's writings. So even though they take place before Paul, they are written after Paul had wrote. And if you don't understand that chronology, you come up with crazy wackiness like Wes is doing.
might be a kernel of truth to that. Like divine revelation, Jesus' spoken words, for example, does underpin the church's authority, and those words were later written down. But even this interpretation doesn't hold up when you examine the historical relationship between the church and the Bible. First, let's quickly clarify what the Bible actually is. It doesn't refer to individual inspired works like the Old Testament, written before the church was founded. It refers to the full collection of Christian scriptures, the Old and the New Testaments together, compiled into a unified whole. That collection,
they would call this definitionalism.
the Old and the New Testament, didn't exist until long after the church had been established. And we know that because the church, acting through her bishops, was the compiler and the editor. So here's where an analogy might help.
Correct. And when we say the church there, we mean the members, the body. The body of Christ is the one who did it. So there's a lot of terminology that Protestants misunderstand. I don't know how you simply, one day you're Catholic, the next day you're Protestant, and somehow you don't understand what the words meant just a day before. But this happens with atheists. Atheists are Christians and they get what the words mean. Then they become atheists and suddenly the words don't make sense anymore. So this happens. It just doesn't make sense to me. The words didn't change. Just your understanding what the words mean changed, and then suddenly your faith is gone. The words still mean the same thing.
All right, so imagine a town building a library. All right, the library depends on books for its purpose and identity, but those books don't create the library. Instead, the townspeople gather, they decide which books belong, and then they organize them into a collection. Similarly,
A much better explanation of this is Bart Ehrman's course. I think it's called How the Bible Was Created or How the Bible Came to Be, something like that. He has two different courses on it. His older course is available on audiobook, and his newer course, I believe, is on Great Courses Plus. Don't quote me on that. But I've watched them both. I listened to them, but I didn't watch them. I listened to them. They're great.
the church doesn't merely rely on scripture. It was the church, guided by the Holy Spirit, that discerned which writings were inspired and which ones weren't, and that later compiled them into what we now call the Bible.
And Dan acknowledges this as much as well also. And by the way, again, the problem comes here is that you're understanding the church and you're thinking the church means, well, the Pope made an official statement. No, that's not what we're saying. The church, the members of the Catholic Church, the people who were orally repeating the story, the people who were going to the churches, to the parishes, who were then going to the Agape feast, and then were later writing down what was said, and then later choosing which traditions were true and throwing out the ones that they thought were not, and then later compiling them, and then later copying what they had written down. All these people were Catholics, were Christian Catholics, were monks, were nuns, were priests. That's who did the writing. And me saying none might be a little bit misleading there. So I'm going to just keep it to the priest and the bishops. Understand that a bishop is also a priest. Let's not worry about that. But the monks also did this.
We can actually see this in action in Matthew 18:15-17, where Jesus tells his disciples, if someone sins and they refuse to listen, tell it to the church. And if they refuse to listen even to the church, treat them as you would a pagan or a tax collector. Starting in verse 15, if your brother sins against you, go and tell him his fault between you and him alone. If he listens to you, you have gained composed. If the Bible makes the church, as West claims, while the Christians before the New Testament tax collector. Notice, Jesus had to have been functioning, teaching, and leading while the Christian scriptures were still being composed.
What's very important here is that when Paul is talking about the scriptures, he's not talking about the New Testament because the New Testament hasn't been written yet. He's talking about the Old Testament. And even then, he's not talking about a compiled set of books unless he's talking about the Septuagint, which again is only the Old Testament. And it's a Greek version of the Old Testament. In the Hebrew version, they would have been on scrolls, not in codexes. And they would have been kept in amphoras.
Bible makes the church, as West claims. How could the church have existed and exercised authority before the Bible was even a thing? West's claim here is actually impossible at face value. The Bible didn't fall out of the sky as a bound collection of books. It was the church that discerned which texts were inspired and to
the ancient church. So when they're talking about bishops, when they're referring to the Lord's table as the Eucharist, well, Eucharisto in Greek just means Thanksgiving. So when they're talking about the Eucharist, it's the Thanksgiving meal. And now, almost exclusively, it's Roman Catholics who use that term for.
And again, Wes has a complete misunderstanding of this. So the Eucharist was given out at the end of every agape feast. And it was the Thanksgiving meal, yes, but it was also giving of the bread and the blood. And again, you can see this in the earliest church fathers. So they believed in real presence and they took part in the Eucharist and the Thanksgiving meal, but they took part in the body and blood. And this was given to each other at the end of these agape love feast. And we got rid of that as a practice because that practice began to get corrupt as more and more Christians used it as an excuse to party. We are Latin, and that is what we do.
Communion. We use terms in Protestantism like the Lord's table or communion. We don't typically say Eucharist. That's kind of the term that the Roman Catholics have continued to use. But if that's your only context and you're thinking, well, we do the Eucharist, and the early church is talking about the Eucharist and they're holding in high regard. I think it would be easy to read those categories back.
So West here seems to be asserting that Catholics project their Eucharistic theology back onto the early church. So they're just sort of like, they've got this view of the Eucharist and then they read it back into the early church fathers. But with all due respect to West, this claim does not hold up, especially when we examine the writings of the earliest church fathers, men who were often disciples of the apostles themselves. For example, take St. Ignatius of Antioch. Writing in AD 107 on his way to martyrdom, Ignatius was the bishop of Syria and was friends with Polycarp. His letters therefore provide a direct window into the beliefs of the early church. In his letter to the Ephesians, Ignatius makes it abundantly clear how the Eucharist was understood. Quote, "The church acknowledges that the Eucharist is the flesh of our Savior, Jesus Christ." End quote. Contra the Docetus heretics who, quote, abstained from Eucharist and prayer, end quote, with the church. Ignatius continued, quote, "Only the Eucharist, which is under the authority of the bishop or whomever he himself designates, is to be considered valid," end quote.
Okay, now, I agree with everything that was just said by Cameron. It's hard to say that sentence, but it's true. All right, this is me. I don't know if you know that handsome man right there. I date him. I'm not gonna lie. Look, I know we're super straight here. I get it. But man, he's handsome. If I'm gonna date anyone, I'm gonna date that man. I'm gonna be honest with you. I sleep with that man every night. I do every night. I sleep with that man. Okay, so this is from, when is this from? 6 months ago. Where's the detail? This is from July 5th, 2024. A whole year ago. No. Okay. Check this out. This is me responding to Wes Huff before he's Wes Huff. Back when he was Melissa Doherty's bitch. That's right, you heard me. He was her little cuck. This is the new biblical scholar. Oh, not another commercial. This is the scholar to end all scholars. This guy will. Again, this is an anti-apologetics channel. This is a debate review channel. This is not a Christian apologetics channel. So, outside of being algorithmic friendly, don't expect non-blue jokes. There will be bad jokes here. Dethrone Kip Davis. You'll make Bart Ehrman look like a fool. I wasn't going to do 2 hours, man. It's 3 a.m. I'm still going. Here we go. This guy. Right there. 6 months ago, okay? I beat all of you. Michael Lofton, pff, joke. Trent Horn, nobody. Myth Vision, what's that? Okay? I beat everyone to the West Huff punch. All right, all you PhDs, quiver in your boots.
Of early Christian is the Bible.
Listen to that
man. Early Christian scribal culture. I focus on biblical, the text of the Bible.
Am I playing? Kip Davis, the reason why you're not a good scholar is because you can't do 100 push-ups and you can't bench press twice your body weight.
A project that we just finished.
Why
that was totally out of context, but it's still great.
Proved gains, man.
I'm going to say it's true. I'm going to say it's true. The reason why Kip Davis doesn't have a larger audience is because he can't do as many push-ups as Wes Huff. That's what I'm saying. That's what I'm saying.
You're not deadlifting enough. It has also the smaller synods that surround the council. Amazon. Okay? Go buy this book. It has all the ecumenical councils. It has also the smaller synods that surround the council.
This is so trippy.
What's good about that is that you see them acknowledging the Roman pontificate well before the word pope is even a thing. You have them acknowledging Rome. You have them talking about Rome being important. There's this great debate that was held on reason and theology. It happened after I read this. So, there's a great debate where they're talking about these smaller councils and how they talk about what position we should respect Rome and how these other patriarchates want the same want to be on the same footing as Rome, but they also want to respect Rome and they want to be treated as being autonomous, just like Rome is. So, just something to think about. The other one I'd recommend, this one's a little shorter, but it's Densinger. Okay? This one has all of them, but it has summaries of them. It doesn't have every... See, this is actually the whole thing. Like, it has...
validation or evidence for it.
Yeah, let me ask one follow-up question from it. What part did Constantine play?
Hold on. I just want to read... I'm flipping through this, and it's been a while since I've read this. I want to read Canon 1 from Nicaea. Insane persons and energumenians should not be ordained. So no crazy people should be ordained.
The only thing I don't like about
Am I
this
having trouble, or
video is that I get lost in the text and I start reading the text and I stop listening to the video halfway through and I just start like reading.
when these copy editors are not very good, they're not educated, they're going to be making more mistakes. So you have those kind of errors happening. And then you have cultural changes and interpretations, not only from when it went from an oral tradition to a written tradition. So you have that development there, but you have the development of the faith itself. So you have certain ideas changing, certain key phrases changing, the meaning of words changing. And that's before you start translating it into different languages. Oh, smart, because I was about to fall off a cliff and sound like an idiot. Thank you, Johnny.
And so in the Protestant...
There's a lack of conversation of Septuagint influence here that is bothering me. I don't know why it's bothering me, but it's the commentaries on Origen are wrong. I don't think you have a proper understanding of what you just said.
And so during the Reformation, there really is no consensus on
There is consensus in the Catholic Church and in the Orthodox Church and in the Coptic Church. There's just not a consensus among the Reformers.
I love that statement.
This is crazy talk. The revival of the Hebrew took until the 1800s. Prior to that,
it would have been mostly rabbis and very dedicated synagogue members, which were hard to be for long periods, which were hard to be for a long period of history. Maimonides, man, like he tried to make a revival of Jewish principles. Like I don't know what this guy's saying. Like it doesn't match the history that I know of the Bible. I'm only going to go 30 more minutes, so we might not finish this video tonight, but that's okay. This is bad. This is wrong.
Are significant in that they're a few verses long. They're really inconsequential in the grand scheme of things, but there are a couple that are.
I'm going to minimize the greatness of this development of there being a longer ending to a gospel by mentioning all the changes that do not matter. I'm going to minimize the great big difference it makes to have entire theology inserted into a gospel by minimizing it, by equating it to spelling differences. This is called apologetics. This is bad. This is wrong. Thank you, me from 6 months ago. 6 months before everyone else started saying the exact same thing that I'm saying now. Ha! Ha, Myth Vision. I beat you to the punch by months. How many people have watched my video? Let me see. What is this? What is this? This is going to be so bad. 69 views. 69 people saw me beat Myth Vision to the punch on West Huff. All right, we're good. We're done. This was fun. Let me get out of here. Give me a second. Let's go to the big screen. This was a good show. This was a fun show. I know it's not my usual time. I know my audience isn't here right now because I usually do this at 10 p.m. and it's like 3 in the morning. I know. I'm well aware. Big screen. All right. So this was a good night. This was a fun night. I am grateful for anyone who popped in on this. I know it's late, but that's okay. My cat wants me to go to bed. I want to go to bed. I'll talk to you all maybe tomorrow night at, let's say, 10 o'clock, 10:30 Central Time. Everyone have a good one. Talk to you all later.
Growing up, parents got me a guitar. Said you could do anything, kid, you could go far. You could be the president, fireman, race cars. The sky's the limit, kid, so shoot for the stars. So I strummed that guitar every day. Found a passion for music, never went away. I joined a couple bands and played a few shows. Tried to impress the girl in the front row. But soon enough, everything starts to change. As you grow up, nobody treats you the same. They try to take your future and make it real safe. You could be a doctor, accountant, or something sane. But yo, whatever happened to the sky was the limit. I fell in love with music, never thought it was a gimmick. I worked so hard on every tune and every single lyric. My whole identity depended on being artistic. Now you wanna strip that away, so you feel okay? Cause if I make it to the top, what does that really say? That you shouldn't have given up, that you made the mistake? But if I fail, you feel much better about picking your lane, right? Yeah, things are gonna get better real soon. Yeah, I'ma just do me, you just do you. I swear it's gonna get better real soon. Don't let anyone tell you what you should do. I got a clear view. We're gonna make it soon. Just keep pushing through. You're what you got to lose.